Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, we have a special treat for all of our listeners who enjoy upland hunting. I'm joined by Tom Keer. Tom is an avid outdoorsman and writer, and I was fortunate enough to catch up with Tom at the end of a day chasing grouse and woodcock in New England. Tom shares his passion for writing and the outdoors and his thoughts on the future of the sports we love. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend and please subscribe and leave us a review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And as we continue to create and distribute more diverse content, you may want to consider downloading our iOS or our Android app. We organize our content by category so you can go straight to the content that interests you the most. The apps are free and the links are in the show notes. Alternatively, just search for The Articulate Fly where you get your mobile apps. Now, on to the interview. Well, Tom, welcome to The Articulate Fly.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm super appreciative that you took some time out of the field to chat with me this evening.
Well, it's dark, so I appreciate you setting the call up at 6:30 because if it was at 4:30, it probably wouldn't have happened.
No, it's all good. And we have a tradition on The Articulate Fly. We always ask our guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
I think it would probably have to be pan fishing with my dad and sister. That's the earliest one I can remember in the Kenzie Reservoir. Bluegills, perch, some smallmouth bass, largemouth bass. Probably about 5 or 6. Got started early because that was in the 60s and there wasn't a lot of digital distraction. So we just started fishing and hunting and playing sports at a young age.
Yeah, very neat. When did you get pulled to the dark side of fly fishing?
Well, that's actually interesting because I got sucked in not because of the fishing. My neighbor, his father was a doctor of cardiopulmonary research at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut, and he was a fly fisherman. He had been to Labrador and New Brunswick and caught a lot of lake trout and char and Atlantic salmon. And he was a big fly fisherman. But I got started through fly tying, and it was in it's probably the 1973 Herder's catalog when I got a Thompson B vise and a bunch of tails and feathers and some fur, and had spent probably about a year or two tying flies, and then got into fly fishing. So I kind of got into it a little bit backwards.
Yeah, we've had a few folks on the show that have kind of done it that way and kind of backed into it because they had all these flies and they wanted to use them.
Right.
And so as you progressed in your fly fishing journey, who are some of the folks that mentored you and what did they teach you?
On the fly side, the mentoring program was a lot different back then. Now it's very organized. There's a lot of the R3 movements that are formulated with courses of instruction. But, I had a lot of middle school coaches, some football coaches, and English teachers that, they were fly fishermen and they would be going fishing. And my dad didn't fly fish. He was a spin fisherman and a surf guy. But they would just offer to take me out. And we worked out a swap where they'd take me fishing and pay for gas. And I'd bring sandwiches and some cookies and chips and some drinks. And, basically when we got to the river or the stream, we'd go our separate ways. They'd offer a tip or two here and there. But, it wasn't really like the kind of formal mentoring program like today, but it was, I was very thankful and it was something that I wanted to do, and they were generous and kind to bring me along, and I just learned a lot, probably more the hard way than the right way.
Yeah, it's always interesting to talk to people that are kind of pre-YouTube and, where, I picked up fishing from fishing with my grandfather, and, you went to the library and you just had to find people that were interested in what you were interested in.
Yeah, you read a lot, and read every single magazine. I still have the some of the early fly tires when they were before it had gone to a 4-page, 4-color separation glossy with a perfect binding. They were typed manuscripts, from North Conway, New Hampshire, with guys like Lou Tabery talking about fishing with floating lines for striped bass in the surf, and fly fishermen. I have a spring 1975 issue that really lit the bug. But magazines, books, trial and error. It was just fun to be outside, and you'd learn something every time you went.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're also a wing shooting enthusiast. When did that become part of your sporting life?
Well, I grew up in a dairy community, so there used to be a lot of birds around. We had, believe it or not, wild pheasant, grouse and woodcock for sure. There were a lot of ducks and geese. So I got started, I think my first dog was an Irish setter, 1973, so I would have been 10. But, again, it was just a different era. There was a lot of open space. Everybody seemed to fish and hunt. There was a lot of game around. Our dogs were terrible. They were line bred from show stock, and they were all Irish setters. We had, I think my dad had the idea that, like Julia Child, more is better, but she was talking about wine and butter. So if the first dog didn't work out, another one would, and then another would, and another would. But they were the genetics were too tight. So they were beautiful to look at. They'd run great for about 5-10 minutes, but after that, they would just their focus. They'd lose their focus, and they'd catch a scent of, could be a deer or a raccoon or a skunk, and they were off and running on their own. So it got real frustrating. So had a bunch of different dogs at that age, but it was real frustrating. When you've got a dog and you're trying to make him or her do what you want them to do, and they just weren't coming around. So it was, we did a lot of that as a kid, but I wasn't very successful at it.
Yeah, I can say that my childhood is scarred with a couple very incorrigible Cocker Spaniels, so I totally get it.
Oh, field cockers?
Yes.
They've really come back in the last bunch of years, increasing in popularity, and they're wonderful little dogs.
Yeah, unfortunately, ours were, I think, inbred and disobedient. So
there you go.
So in terms of wing shooting, was it the dogs that, because I know some people are drawn to the sport because of watching the dogs work, and then there are other people that are really into the birds. I mean, what was it that pulled you into wing shooting?
I think it was the dogs. I like the firearms. I grew up in the Connecticut River Valley, so we were surrounded by all the gun companies. I was born in Meriden, which is where Parker shotguns were made. Marlin was made in North Haven, 2 towns away. 9 miles away was Winchester and Mossburg. About 18, 20 miles away was Colt and Hartford, and then upriver in Springfield, Mass, just north of the tobacco fields in Connecticut, was Smith & Wesson and Savage. So, it was, people forget that Connecticut River Valley was really rich in firearm companies. So I like guns. I like the history. I like the literature. I love art. And birds, obviously, I love. But for me, it's the dogs. You create a team with a dog. You have good days. You have bad days. You have days in the middle. There's a lot of camaraderie when they do things right. And it's usually the result of having a dog with good genetics and one that you put the time in to train. And, it's a real team effort. So I like that. Fly fishing solitary, working with dogs, it's the team. And I think that, the combination of the two makes for a real rich life.
Yeah, it's neat. I mean, I don't bird hunt a lot, but I'm always just, that happiness on the dog's face to me is just makes the entire day worthwhile.
Was running my dog. We've got a couple real good dogs right now. I was running my wife's dog, Rebel, who's he's 6. He's an English setter, and he's just been jam on. He was the easiest dog I've ever had to bring along. Good genetics. He was from Buck Carrico's. Buck owns Lion Country Supply, the big gun dog supply company in Port Matilda, Pennsylvania, and he's just a wonderful dog. And I've got a puppy. He's just turned 2, and he's from Jim Chambers and Thor Kane's litter a couple years ago, and he's a setter also. He's been doing great. But the thing that was funny yesterday is we had a flight of woodcock that came in. So about 2 days ago, we had 6-7 inches of snow, and it pushed a lot of woodcock down. And I went into the first cover with the puppy, and he was jam on. And I walked in, and I saw one woodcock go off to the side, and another one popped up, and then another one, and another one. There were 5 of them, and he came unglued. I've never seen 5 woodcock go up at the same time. The most I'd ever seen was 3, and seen 2 not often, but often enough. And he just got excited. He got, you could just see it in him. He was just super excited. But we moved 35 birds for over the next 90 to 120 minutes, and he knocked most of them. He'd make a brief point. He was excited. He'd go in and bust them. So we had to, pull back out and do a little bit of training, calm them down, and staunch them back up, and get back in the game and get them refocused. But most importantly, to calm them down. And that's just the wonderful part of dogs. It's just like with kids. It's like with people. It's like with athletics. You have some good days, you have some average days, and you have some really poor days. But turning those poor days into an average day to a great day, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's really neat. And so, you've had lots of dogs over the course of your life. Do you have a preference for setters versus pointers?
Well, going from the Irish setters, it was natural. I like setters. I like performance setters. I like that 40 to 45 pound for a male, a little bit smaller for a female. I like their athleticism. I like their square heads and their triangular faces, their muzzles, so that they can get a lot of oxygen in. Like their gait. I like them running inside the bell range, which is usually 100, 150 yards. So, they're just naturally athletic. So shifting from the poor performing line bred Irish setters to the English setters was a huge advantage. And I've stuck with the breeds for my entire life. I love pointers. I will probably have a pointer at some point in my life. But I think in an article that I recently wrote for Strong, I was talking about I love all horses, some dogs, and no cats. The horses, I love horses. It doesn't matter if it's a mini or a draft horse. I just love them all. And when it comes to dogs, I love sporting dogs. And within the sporting dogs, I love pointing dogs. And within the pointing dog realm, I'm a setter guy. But I am a sucker for pointers. I like their athleticism. I like their build. I just like the way they're wired. They're just, they've got great noses, good bird smarts, and they're just athletic as all get out. Probably a little soft on the versatile dogs. I like the field cockers. John Rex Gates and Diane Demingate are breeding some really great English field cockers to use as strike dogs and also as flushing dogs. Springers, I like springers. I like short hairs. I do like Weimaraners. they're kind of a cool dog. But I'm a setter guy.
Got it. And, I think you wrote about this too recently in Strung. Talk a little bit about how breed preferences have changed over time.
Well, they're trendy. And I had never really thought that the dog breeds were really trendy. And I started seeing in the AKC, every year the AKC will announce, the rankings. And I saw that the Lab had been America's sweetheart for over a quarter century. And that's well deserved. There are a lot of different types of labs, whether they're the UK labs like the Blue Cypress Kennels labs, Robert Milner's labs that he founded Wild Rose Kennels, and now he has Duck Hill Kennels. But there's a reason they're great dogs. But I saw that the German Shorthair Pointer had crept up into the number 9 position, and I said, that's interesting. Why? Because it's not like we've seen a tremendous increase in hunters. So I was curious as to what's making this the 9th most popular breed in America. And it's because they're athletic dogs, they're biddable dogs, they like the water, they like land, they can point, they can retrieve, they can track. And they're a versatile dog for a good reason, because a lot of people like them for active outdoor sports. They like trail runners, can run with a short hair. They, if you like to swim or canoe or kayak, any other water sports, you can do that with a short hair very easily. Any of the bike touring where you have you're riding a bike and you have your dog tethered to get some exercise. So so their popularity has increased because of their multi-purpose use, that they appeal to a lot of people, all people who like active outdoor sports, whether it's hunting or hiking. And then I started looking a little deeper into, not being self-conscious, but I was a little self-conscious, saying, what about my dog, right? Where do my dogs fall on the list? And they're abysmal. And then I started researching when was the last time that, that setters and pointers and, Gordon setters, when were they popular? And the last time that they were popular was the turn of the century. Well, that's a long time ago. So there's a trendiness with breeds. Some of it may be coming about more recently because of digital communication. Some of it is taste preference, as people are moving away from hunting, the consumptive sports, hunt, fish, which is to the non-consumptive sports, hiking, camping, mountain biking, canoeing, kayaking, etc. That people like to be outdoors, and in order to share that experience with a dog, you have to have a performance dog of some sort. And that's where the short hair came in. So it was interesting starting to look at some of the trends and how they do change over time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because I can remember as a kid, people still keeping working dogs that really never came in the house. And I don't see that very much anymore. I can't think of anyone that I know anymore that, the hunting dogs stay out in the kennels and don't come in the house.
Well, that's been if you're a pro trainer or a serious hunter, you'll keep your dogs in dog runs and kennels, outside. There's a benefit to it as well, because they're used to the environment. So if you have, say, a Labrador that you can use for waterfowling and it's been outside, going from the summer to the fall to the winter, the dog is already accustomed to the environment. It's used to the cold. There's you can run into some problems if you take a dog that's used to the house and say you keep your heat set at 70 degrees and it's used to 70 degrees, and suddenly you're in in a duck blind, it's 34 degrees with a wind chill. It might be down to the low 20s, high teens. That dog is not used to the environment. So it can, you have to watch out for hypothermia, frostbite, things like that. So, but to your point, there is a big difference between the bond in a dog. Do you get better performance from your dog if you have him sleep in your bed with you, which was George Bird Evans from West Virginia's old hemlock setters theory, that the more time you spend with a dog, especially indoors, or sleeping in your bed, that dog will want to perform better for you. And the flip side to that coin is that dogs that are only taken out of their kennels and their outdoor dog runs to perform, whether it's for training or for conditioning or for actually hunting, that they are wired and focused, that when they come out of that dog run and go into a dog box and then are released into a field or a marsh, that they are focused 110% on their job at hand, whether it's pointing birds, flushing birds, or retrieving them. So there isn't a right answer. It's just kind of two sides to the equation. I've seen both work really well. And
got it. And, so to kind of come back to the bird part of the equation, what's your favorite bird to pursue in the field?
Probably three. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool New Englander, so grouse, woodcock is the upland bird that we have here. So that's what we're hunting now. We're finding a lot more woodcock than grouse, but those are my top two. My wife, as we had spoken before, is from North Carolina, so spending a lot of time down there, really like quail. So those would probably be my top three, but that's just because I haven't had the opportunity to go out west and hunt prairie birds, or the Southwest to hunt, the different species of quail. But, if it involves a bird and a dog and some good people, I'm in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, absolutely. And, you fish a lot and you wing shoot a lot. And so, I get the impression that you're one of those people that has that, what I would kind of call that old school seasonal arc to your sporting life, so that, the timing may differ a little bit every year, but I suspect you have a very deliberate cadence to your sporting activities throughout the year.
I appreciate you mentioning that, because I had 5 friends that were supposed to come up and hunt, and they all bailed for, we had this plan for months, and they all bailed just for whatever reason, none of them were really good reasons. They just hadn't planned for it, so I am very deliberate in it. I like to fish. I like to hunt. I like to run dogs. I've been doing a lot of gardening with my wife, which I never thought I would like, but I really enjoy it. So there's a seasonality to things, You can't plant corn in August and expect it to be ready at the end of the month, So yeah, late September, October through probably mid-November is grouse, woodcock. Shift over from where we live. We live on the Cape Cod. We've got some duck marshes behind our house, so we'll shoot some black ducks, some diver ducks, some sea ducks, probably through mid-January. A couple of trips down for Christmas to see my wife's family, so we'll do some southern, bobwhite quail hunting, or more recently, woodcock, just because there are more woodcock around. And then it comes back to trout fishing in the spring, which, as you know, is the best time. The hatches are the best, and then move into turkey hunting, then striped bass and bluefish. It's pretty much the year, albacore and bonito when they come in August, September. And then we go right back into the hunting. So it's predictable, because I like to fish and hunt.
Yeah, very neat. And, you've been really fortunate to spend most of your professional life in the hunting and fishing space. And, I know so many people who are desperately trying to align their professional life with their outdoor passion. What are your suggestions for folks who kind of want to blend those together?
That's a good question. I think anything in life comes down to making a decision. My wife always says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And if you stand for fishing and hunting, and that's something that's part of your life and it's something that you want to do, then you just have to do it. I was working in advertising in Boston, a big agency, when I got out of grad school, and I was working 7 days a week. Most of the time it was, 16 to 18 hour days. And after about a year and a half of, making a lot of money, which was necessary because I had to pay off my college and grad school debt. And living in the city, is expensive. And after about a year and a half, I realized that I hadn't been fishing but once or twice. And that was important to me. And I hadn't tied a single fly. And that's how I got into fly fishing. I hadn't fly fished for a striped bass or thrown a plug. I didn't have a dog. I wasn't hunting. And, but I would, had a career, and everybody thought that was, wow, you're lucky to be working in advertising. And they were right. And it was cool. And it was a great time. But I didn't get to do what I liked. And finally, one day, I just had enough. And I said, if I keep on this path, I'm going to be retired, probably somewhere in my 60s, and I'm going to be sitting in a rocking chair, looking back on my life thinking, I worked a lot, made a lot of money, became a partner in an ad agency, traveled the world, did whatever, but I never really got to do what I liked to do, and I quit on the spot. And I started writing at that point. And, freelance writing, as you know, is not a lucrative business. It was more lucrative back then before digital, when compensation was $1 to $3 a word, and books were being published regularly and purchased on a regular basis. So you could actually make a living as a writer, as opposed to now. It's hard. But, you have to commit to it. You have to find, you have to make decisions, and some of these decisions are not the easiest ones. I wound up living in this dump apartment. There's a top floor. It didn't have any heat. I had this little space heater. It was $375 a month. It was 2 blocks away. I was in Roxbury, 2 blocks away from Boston City Hospital, which was right when Mike Dukakis was trying to combat the AIDS epidemic by giving free needles to heroin addicts. And I'd, walk down the stairs in the morning to go to work and, doing whatever odd jobs I was doing at the time. And, there'd be junkies passed out on my front doorstep that I'd have to step over. But, you start out slow and you just keep at it. I write every day. It's not something that I just wake up and do. I treat it like a sport. It's like, you got to go to practice, you got to hit the weight room, you got to condition, you got to, do your drills, and then you can get ready for the game. So I write every day. Some of it gets published, some of it is just character sketch, or I work on dialogue or work on plot lines. But every day I'm working on my craft, because the craft is the most important part. It's kind of like you with the podcast, and the questions that you sent over. You're a student, and you're working on your craft and trying to pull together questions that would create a meaningful podcast. It's not just something that you do once every 6 months or so. So I think that it's commit to it, and I think it's established standards. There's a lot of changes in publishing going on, and have been, especially with digital, and some of it isn't particularly good. Publishing is a legitimate business, but on the digital side, there's a belief that because you can set up your own web page and have a blog or post socially, that there isn't a formula or a format or a semblance of professionalism, but there really is. And if you take a look at what was that? That was the Cowboys and Eagles game. I think it was December, either late November 2012 or December 2012, somewhere around there, Sunday Night Football. But Bob Costa got in big trouble for doing one of the problems that I see with the digital world is, which is at the halftime show. What do you want to listen to at the halftime show? You want to hear offensive production. You want to hear key matchups. You want to hear second half substitutions. You want to see, an entertainment show maybe, or cheerleaders, etc. But you basically want to talk football. And he took that halftime show and talked about gun control and Second Amendment. So that is a shift that is very dangerous, because you're going from vetted information to non-vetted information. Vetted information comes from the source, fact check. It allows the audience. It presents both. The topics are presented on two sides. It's the pro and the con, and the audience, the reader, the listener, the viewer, is allowed the opportunity to make up his or her own mind based on the information that's presented. And it's presented by a company, New York Times, Outdoor Life, Field and Stream, Strong, Sporting Classics, Great Sporting Journal, Sporting Dog Journal, Retriever Journal, etc., that have been around for a long time, and they are a source that makes sure that the information that comes out is like the New York Times' motto: all the news that's fit to be printed. Non-vetted information is just, there's a lot of the digital, which is people can make up whatever they want. And it's why you start seeing a lot of, people saying, well, if it was on Facebook, it must be true, right? Well, Facebook, people believe that Facebook or some of the digital magazines are vetted sources and many are, but they may be non-vetted. So vetted is fact-driven, non-vetted is opinionated. And that's what Bob Costa did on the Cowboys Eagles halftime report, as he used a vetted source, which is a TV network, and he used it to present a non-vetted piece of information, which was his opinion of Second Amendment and gun control. And when those two start blending, that's what is called hashtag fake news. So for the digital networks that are following professional standards of journalism, no problem. If they're offering opinions on a regular basis or just trying to fire everybody up to get more likes or clicks, that's opinion based.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out, because I've kind of watched. I haven't been in the front row seat like you have, but I've certainly seen. To me, it seems like people are kind of starting to wake up to this, and there's kind of a push to go back to curation, to for lack of a better word, to kind of get some type of good housekeeping stamp of approval on content. Certainly not everybody, but it seems like kind of people that are being more thoughtful, that realize that, paper boys are kind of a thing of the past, or kind of trying to find kind of a substitute for that in the 21st century.
I think you're right. And it's probably just the natural origin of trying to adjust to a new form of media. So, but agreed.
Yeah.
It's necessary.
Yeah, and so if we back up a little bit, I just want to make sure I understand it. How old were you when you kind of had what I know some people call an Irish moment, and you're like, I'm out. I'm going to become a writer?
I'd always written. I started, just kind of like with fly fishing. I got into it backwards. I started fly tying, and then I got into fly fishing. I started out, it was always loved to read as a kid. So I first was a reader and then became a writer. I started off writing poetry. I sucked at it. Wrote a lot of short fiction, literary short fiction. And, that was teens, early 20s. And the aha moment was probably late 20s.
Yeah, got it. Do you remember the first piece that you got published and got paid for?
Oh, paid for?
Mm-hmm.
Paid for. So when you're, back in the day, you'd go through the formal process. You would type up a query letter, send it to an editor. They would take 6 to 8 weeks to review it. If they liked the idea, they would give you an assignment. If they didn't, they'd say no. Others liked finished manuscripts, and you would send in the finished manuscript. They would take somewhere between 3 and 4 months and either accept it and send you a check, or they would reject it. But a lot of them, if you were a new writer, you would be compensated on tear sheets. So my first published piece was for a literary journal in Connecticut called Heading Out, and I got no money but 10 copies of the magazine. The reason that was important is so that when I would send in my next round of queries, I would include this tear sheet. So the editor could see that I was published, and then that would grow into more revenue producing. But I think it was a scuba piece for Marblehead magazine that was actually my first compensation.
Yeah, very neat. And who are some of the authors and writers that you like to read and follow?
In just in general, or for sporting?
I think kind of both, really, because it's kind of always interesting to me. I find some outdoor writers, it's always interesting to hear about who they read or who inspires them also kind of outside of the outdoor writing world.
So on the general reading, I like the modernist and the postmodernist era. So that'd be James Joyce, Ford Maddox Ford, Virginia Woolf, D.H. Lawrence, Thomas Mann. On the postmodern side, Thomas Pynchon, Toni Morrison, Günter Grass, Milan Kundera. On the sporting side, and I just like, there's a transition, there's the pre-war, the modernist era was before World War I. So there had never been a world war. So it was an era of prosperity. People were writing in long flowery sentences. The themes were of interest. They were exploring social milieus, different economic levels, art, music. And then the postmodern era was after World War II, and there were two significant factors. One was the dropping of the atomic bomb, which triggered the realization that life could end at any moment. And we still talk about that today, that we're talking about North Korea. What if they drop the bomb? That life could end. So that brought about a literary style of pessimism, nihilism, negativity, what's the worth, self-questioning. And the breakdown of the nuclear family was the second big component of it, which is divorce, which again, I think divorce rates are up around 60-65%. So it's what happens when the standard family breaks down from 2.1 kids per average household. Now you have single parent homes, some, surrogate parents. It's very different now. So that was a big change of going from the atomic bomb dropping and the breakdown of the nuclear family. As it pertains to sporting, a lot of wonderful writers, like Gene Hill, Nash Buckingham, Havila Babcock, Steve Smith, Dave Brooks. Steve Smith was the editor of the Pointing Dog Journal and Retriever Journal. He's a wonderful writer. Dave Brooks is out in Montana. They're both contemporaries. Wonderful writer. Jim McLennan is great. Shane Townsend, he's in Virginia. He's phenomenal. He writes Fish Hunt. Whose work I like a lot is Ryan Sparks from Strong. He's a great writer. I like Roger Pinckney from South Carolina. He's got a very interesting style. Mike Gaddis, he's from North Carolina. He's real good. So, we're fortunate that there are a lot of really good contemporary writers.
Yeah, it's funny. I seem to buy about 4 books for everyone that I have time to read. So I completely understand the, I guess the blessing of the riches and of so many people to read, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so you're a little bit older than me, but not much. And so, I always like to say the older I get, I just have a few miles on my tires. We talk.
That's a good one.
Right. So, we talked a little bit about kind of your literary interests, and I think there's probably a similar kind of thought process around kind of how the sport has changed, fishing and hunting sports have changed kind of over your lifetime and your career. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I guess I'd probably have to couch it with just life's a lot more complex these days. It used to be simple. We didn't have any of the stranger danger stuff. My friends and I, when I was 10, so that would have been 73, we'd get our crappy little bikes. We'd take the laces out of our Chuck Taylor All-Star sneakers, tie a rod and reel to the bike frame, get a backpack with a couple of sandwiches, and we'd ride 10, 15, 20 miles to go fishing. And we would do that all day. Half the way home, we'd probably get tired because we were 10 or 11 and we'd been at it all day. And, I'd grown up in a dairy farm community, a farmer would be driving by in a pickup, usually a Ford F-250, and say, "You fellas need a ride," and we'd throw bikes in and jump in the back, and that would be that. You didn't have to worry about anything. And, same thing with hunting. You could knock on a neighbor's door and say, "I saw some turkeys in your backyard or some geese in your back field. Do you mind if we go and hunt them up?" There'd be no problem. And now everything's getting a lot more complex. It's harder to find places to fish and hunt. A lot of competition for spots and for game. There's a lot of chatter on the social networks about, I was reading a seminar in one of the writers, the National Writers Organizations, that they're doing one on people feeling insignificant based on other people's social media posts. That if you take the time and shoot a 12-point buck and post the picture up, and if I see that I feel bad about myself, like I didn't get one, I only got a 4-pointer. And that's, that never was around. It's like, you earned that buck. You put more time in than me. You know more of what you were doing. You paid your dues. You probably had a lot of days where you didn't see any game, but you stuck with it and you fought through it, and the cold and the long days. And then, you put the ball in the end zone and you harvested a 12-pointer. Good for you. It shouldn't be anything about me. I should work harder. So there's, and it's a lot more social as opposed to, which is more about the people as opposed to the activity. It used to be a lot more focused on, a lot of focus on the dogs, a lot of focus on the technique, a lot of focus on the process, not so much on the gear. More on the tactics, more on the ethics. There was always a nod to those who came before us because they knew more than we did. They made the same mistakes over and over again when they were our age, and they learned from it, and they're happy to pass it along. So I think that's a big shift,
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of flows into my next question is really kind of your thoughts and concerns about the future of outdoor sports and our sporting traditions.
You're asking all the hard-hitting questions here, my friend. I'm sure that when the first ice box came out, the first telephone came out, when electricity came on to replace, the kerosene lantern, people were concerned that life was over as we know it. And I guess, I was talking with Angela and my wife, and we're just looking at hunter numbers and, putting it in context that hunters are less than 5% of the American population. And, fluctuating somewhere around 11 to 15 million, depending on the year. I'm concerned that they're going away. I'm concerned that we're turning our back on tradition and focusing more on, the future. And I noticed this when I was coming back from hunting in New Brunswick. It was about 2:00 in the morning. I saw this car pulled over to the side of the road. There was this glow coming from underneath the chassis. I was like, do I pull over to see if this person needs help? But the glow underneath the chassis made me think that this might be a drug dealer, right? And I hate thinking that way. Anyhow, I pull over. And now I'm looking in the woods to make sure that there isn't some gang that's going to come and steal my car. Not that I care about the car, but my dogs are in the car. And I care about the dogs, so I didn't want that to happen. Well, I walked up to the side of the car, and what do I see? I see the car, the right front tire is jacked up, and the glow coming out from underneath the chassis was from a cell phone. And it was this young man, probably about 19, 20, maybe 21. And he had his phone on and he was watching a YouTube of how to change a flat tire. And so therein lies the dilemma, which is, I think it's really cool that technology, just like going back to the first lights and, the first cars and the first, washing machines and refrigeration. That's all cool and it's interesting. I think that it's really cool that this kid could take a look at a video on YouTube about how to change a car tire. My question is, what if he was outside of still range? And why is this not a skill that he automatically knows? That if he is going to drive a car, why does he not know how to maintain it? Why is everything reliant upon just in time? Why is everything consumed immediately? Because when I look at the quality of outdoorsmen, we have better gear, we have better technology. Do we have better woodsmanship skills? Hunting with my daughter a bunch of years ago, she was calling me an old man. And I said, yeah, okay, why? And she's like, because you use a compass and a map to navigate. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to get us up and you get us back. She was like, fine. So we're running the dogs, and we go up one mountain and over the mountain, and we're down in a valley, and there's probably about an hour and a half hunt. And I said, all right, I've done my share. You take over. You get us back to the truck. And she goes to, pull up her Google Maps and figure out her GPS and figure out how to get us back. But there's no signal. But she just about had a meltdown. So I let her sit on it for about 10, 15 minutes. And then, was able to teach her some basic woodsmanship, like watching where the sun is rising, the path of the sun, so you can get a bead, looking at the mountain ranges, looking at the valleys, watching where the rivers are and the streams are flowing because they're flowing downhill. And we got back, and it was a great learning experience. But I guess I'm a little bit concerned that some of these tried and true techniques that have worked for generations are getting scrapped in favor of technology. I see a lot of these satellite imagery, to locate places to hunt. What's wrong with knocking on the door? I think some of them are helpful, and you can find out where the property boundaries are, or find out where there have been primary or secondary, growth from a cut that has been about 10, 15 years ago. But, what's wrong with knocking on the door and getting some interpersonal connection? Because I've always found that that's where the hot tips come from. When you talk with someone, and you can look online all you want, and they are helpful, and I do use a lot of it. But, I have never found anything that has been superior to knocking on the door and someone saying, hey, do you know Bob Walker down the road because he cut his whole back woodlot 15 years ago and it's loaded with grouse? And that's not something that you can Google or find it. And that's the fun part. You're meeting people. You're interacting with people. It's the sweet part of life. It's why I quit advertising to go into this. It's the people. It's the dogs. It's the animals. It's the environment. It's conservation. It's being outside and, being surrounded by people who are similarly minded. So I'm a little concerned about the direction of it, but, hopefully, as you were pointing out on some of the fact checking on some of the media outlets, hopefully it'll correct itself, and this is just, and we'll be able to use technology for its highest and best purposes, as opposed to just, opinionated reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I've got, I guess, an 18-year-old and a 12-year-old son, and so we kind of struggle with this. Are you a slave to technology? Does it serve you? I think it's interesting too to see them. I think there's been kind of we try to package all of our outdoor experiences now, and so it's not about putting the time in and understanding that it's not a worse experience; it's a richer experience. And, like showing up, paying your money and having the experience, whether it's a hunting or fishing experience, it's okay, but it's not the same.
A couple summers ago, it was a stinking hot August day. It was like 100 during the day. It was like 90 at night. It was 100% humidity. It's about 8 o'clock, and I said to my wife, it's so stinking hot. You want to go get an ice cream? And she goes, yeah. So we go to, this place called soft serve. It's big, Cape Cod's a tourist place in the summer. And there were these 5 good-looking guys. They're all in great shape. They were right in front of us, standing in line. But they were complaining. My Lord, were they complaining. After listening to it for about 2 or 3 minutes, I was about to lose my mind. I said, guys, what is wrong? And this one said, this place sucks. I said, brother, how bad can it be? There are hot chicks in bikinis all over the beach. You can go fishing, surfing, stand-up paddle boarding. You can go canoeing, kayaking. You can rent a powerboat, a sailboat. You can golf. You can play tennis on a clay court. You can hike, you can mountain bike, you can ride a road bike. I mean, you can go clamming, and how bad can it be? And he goes, there's no Wi-Fi on the beach. And at that point, I was pretty hacked off. I just said, let's get out of here. And we went to a different place because I was really pissed. But it made me wonder, like, why would they come to an active outdoor sport area where you could go fishing, surfing, snorkeling, stand-up paddleboarding, everything I said before, and be on their phone?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was certainly not my experience in Boy Scouts. I mean, that was, back then it was basically boom boxes and Walkmen, and it was a great way to have your tent lines cut, right? So
exactly,
that was the Scoutmaster's enforcement tool of choice.
Yeah, I'm almost ready to start a campaign called "Bring Back the Roadie," so that you could drink while you're driving. Because when I watch people, think about it. When you drink and drive, like if you're done fishing and you have a couple beers while you're driving, you are paranoid about getting pulled over for drinking while driving. But you are a better driver at that point because you're so paranoid about being caught. Whereas when I see people that are texting and driving, they're all over the road.
Yeah.
So maybe we should start a new campaign, Bring Back the Roadie.
Yeah, there you go. And speaking of campaigns, when you're not out in the field, you're the managing partner of the Keer Group. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of the business and, how it helps outdoor companies grow their business?
So I started in advertising and public relations. Then I went to work for Orvis. I wound up running the wholesale division for national and international sales and marketing. And that's where I met my wife. She was running the contact center in Virginia. And I was on the road 300 days a year. She was, when you're running a call center, peak season starts on Thanksgiving Day Eve and runs throughout the season, so she was working through Christmas Eve. And finally we just said, there's got to be a better way, because I was doing what I was doing in advertising, which is working all the time. And we said, well, let's play to our strengths. We've got advertising, PR, branding, positioning, marketing. We've got back-end ops and technology. Brought in a couple financial partners to help on some of our projects. And that's how we started the Keer Group 2005 or six? Five? I think 2000, late 2005. So we've been around for 15 years. We've worked with a lot of companies, small, medium, and large. We do cap raises. We've worked on the private and public sector. We've worked with conservation groups and travel and tourism, consumer goods. And we mostly focus on two parts, either launching new companies or taking underperforming companies and turning them around. And so 90% of our business is fish hunt. We have overlapped on some of the, supporting activities. Could be water sports, equestrian. Don't do much with golf, but so that's been a lot of fun. And everyone we work with, all of our employees and subcontractors they're just great people. They're from around the country and bring their A game and their skill sets. And we look to match ability with client. So obviously if it's someone, if it's a wing shooting client, we're looking for art directors who actually bird hunt, who run dogs, who understand. We're looking for photographers or content creators. We're really looking for people who live this. So it's bringing that extra level of authenticity to a client, as opposed to just hiring a general marketing agency that understands marketing, branding, positioning, e-com, etc. But because it's not in their DNA to fish and hunt. They understand it mentally, but not emotionally. And as you know, that's what binds us all to these sports. It's the emotional connection. It's the passion. It's bringing out that passion, like the why. Why do we do this? Why do we choose to bird hunt? Why do we choose to fly fish as opposed to go bowling or golfing? Not that there's anything wrong with bowling or golfing, but it begs the question, why is it that we choose fly fishing as opposed to a different sport? And that's what we want to bring to life. So it's really celebrating the lifeblood of the client, their reason for being, what they can do to impact and make a consumer's experience better.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I think, if you make the mistake of picking, the blocking and tackling team, it generally never ends well from a marketing execution perspective. You have to be able to do that, but if you don't wire it with the passion, it just doesn't work.
That's right. It's like, and it's integral to writing, it's, one of the key things of, when I read a lot of contemporary writers, and what I'm most looking for is for them to show me. And what they most often do is tell me. So telling me is logical. Showing me is emotional. So if you if you say the old man, you are telling me and trying to get me to think that man is old. Now, to my 22-year-old daughter, someone who is 32 is an old man. To a 32-year-old man, someone who is 50 years old is an old man. To someone who's 50, you got to be 70 to be old. And those are very different. So you have to show the person. The man was walking down the street. He had no hair on the top of his head, and the fringe around the sides was gray. His gnarled hands clutched the walking cane. He was bent over from years of scoliosis. So you're showing someone as opposed to just saying the old man, because you don't know what the old man is. You got to show it. And when you show it, then you tap into someone's emotion.
Yeah, and it kind of all goes downhill from there, right?
Yeah, that's what binds people to brands. It's that passion.
Absolutely. And, as we kind of wind down tonight, Tom, I know you write for a lot of different folks. Where's the best place for people to kind of follow your writing?
It used to be my own website, which was tomkeer.com, but I haven't had a chance to update it. So it's usually just look at bylines in magazines, or, you can Google it. I write for about 75 different titles. So I've got a minimally active social page. So I usually post some of the digital stuff and some of the print stuff on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. Tend to do a little bit more of LinkedIn. But, kind of old school, and which is funny because I get a lot of people that, good friends of mine that will call up and say, "Hey, I just read this great article you'd like." And I say, "What's it about?" Tell me what it's about. And I say, "Hey, I wrote that." And they usually say, "You didn't write that. Your writing isn't that good." But it's Write for Strong, which is a great magazine. Tail, I write for Sporting Classics. Shooting Sportsman, Pointing Dog Journal, Retriever Journal, Just Labs, Outdoor Life Field Stream, Garden and Gun, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, Rough Grouse Society, a bunch of them. It's fun.
Absolutely. And, what's the best way for folks to follow your adventures in the field and get in touch with you?
Probably on social media or, email addresses, our company website is thekeergroup.com or, send me I like emails, tom@thekeergroup.com.
Absolutely. And I'll drop those in the show notes, and I'll also drop your social media handles in there too.
Well, that's very kind of you. I appreciate it.
I live to serve, and I appreciate you taking some time this evening. I'm sure you're tired. You've probably been running your dogs, I think, at this point for about a week. And hopefully you've got some scotch or some bourbon in your future this evening.
Bourbon will do. I'll have a glass in your honor. And I appreciate you having me on. So thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks so much, Tom.
Talk with you later.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, if you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a review in the podcatcher of your choice. Tight lines, everybody.